Live on MaxDefender8.com, here's Chief Meteorologist Jeff Berardelli.
All right, everybody. So the last place I want to be on a Friday night is talking about a tropical threat with you. I promise you that. But unfortunately, no rest for the weary here. We have been talking about this the past couple of days, and we've been generally talking about it as a threat for a lot of heavy rain and maybe some flooding. But it's becoming more apparent, and it started to yesterday, even more so today, that we're likely to see a real tropical system in the Gulf. And there's even some chance, and it's a decent chance, that this will become a hurricane before getting to the state of Florida. Now, the details are still very kind of gray because it's early in the game. The National Hurricane Center did something big tonight. They increased the chance of development. They yesterday had 30, today they had 50, and now they have a 70% chance of development, and actually a 30% chance of development by Sunday, and a 70% chance of development over the next 5 to 7 days. So I want to first show you what's going on across the Atlantic, and I'm going to take all your questions, and I'm going to do it quick today because I don't have that many graphics. I only have like 5 graphics to get through. But there's Kirk. That's a Cat 4 hurricane, almost became a Cat 5 last night. Tropical Storm Leslie, which could become a strong hurricane. Right behind that, another system which has a 30% chance of development. And then in the Gulf of Mexico, well, that area, which had a 50%, now is a 70%. See that area of convection in the western Gulf of Mexico? That was over the Pacific, crossed over Mexico. And so it still actually has some energy associated with it. And it seems to maybe allow it to develop a little faster than ordinary systems. So at this point, it has a 70% chance of development. Remember, put your questions on our Facebook page, the WFLA Facebook page, and I'll do my best to answer them for you. All right, so that's that. Let me go to the next graphic and show you where our models say it's going to go. Now, these are what we call the 12Z models. So they're run at 8 a.m., and they become available to us by like 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And this is what they show. We have gotten an updated American model and an updated German model, which don't appear here. But the German model hasn't changed. The German model is showing like a high-end tropical storm, low-end hurricane through Fort Myers, just to let you know. The American model has backed off a little bit on what it had earlier, which was a high-end tropical storm, low-end hurricane passing right near Tampa Bay. Now it's a little further south, but it could come back again. It runs every 6 hours, so every 6 hours you get a different result there. European model has a pretty strong system moving right near Tampa Bay, and the European AI model is about a day faster, which seems very unlikely. And it's a tropical storm through Fort Myers area, maybe just slightly north of there. The Canadian model is the odd man out here because it develops a system and it gets stuck over the Yucatan. Then it moves north, and then not until next Monday does it get to Florida. That seems very unlikely. But it gets stuck in the Gulf for days. We don't want a system that gets stuck in the Gulf for days. That's not good. All right, so I want to talk about what's going on, and you can see this graphic right here. Let me back this up for you because I have this on Monday, but let me back it up so you can see it a little bit closer, and then I'll show you. Let's see, go like Sunday at 8 a.m. here. Okay, so here it is basically now, and you notice there is wind shear, but it's in the northern Gulf. So this system is far enough south in the Bay of Campeche so that it's kind of shielded. So if it has a chance to develop, it could develop pretty quickly over the next 24 to 48 hours. Not to say that it'll be a named storm by Sunday, but it could really get its act together. It could concentrate its thunderstorms. It could start to spin, in which case it may be able to beat the wind shear to the punch, if you will. Because watch this. As we head into Saturday and Sunday, the wind shear starts to move south, but not much. It's still protected. That storm is not quite being affected yet by wind shear on Sunday. So if it forms by Sunday, I think we have a better chance of this getting a little stronger. Here we are on Monday morning at 8 a.m. Now the wind shear is starting to interact with it, but there's something interesting about this. Wind shear can be destructive on the north side of systems, but sometimes if the tropical system is in the right spot, it can use the jet stream that's diving to the south to actually cause it to intensify. So there's kind of a fine line there as to whether the wind shear kind of destroys it or it actually enhances it. So as long as the system stays far enough south, actually something like this dip in the jet stream, could enhance the system until too much wind shear moves to the south and starts to weaken it. So there is the possibility of that. Just want to let you know. And then as we head towards Tuesday, the jet kind of dives south and back up. That tries to pull the circulation northeastward, potentially towards Fort Myers or Tampa, from what would be the southern Gulf into the central and eastern Gulf. So by Tuesday, it's already located off the coast. Maybe it's a tropical storm. Maybe by Tuesday late, it's approaching, a Category 1 hurricane status. It's conceivable. Let me show you the European model, then I'll show you the rainfall totals, and then I'm gonna answer your questions. Okay. All right. So here's the European model, and I'll start it out tomorrow morning. You can see that thunderstorm activity starting to concentrate, and there we go. Already by Sunday, there's a spin. So by Sunday, we may actually have a named storm. And if we don't have a named storm, we may have a potential tropical cyclone. In fact, I'm virtually certain that if there's something hasn't formed by later Sunday, that the National Hurricane Center is going to call this a potential tropical cyclone as early as Sunday, because they're going to need to start issuing watches for Florida or wherever this is headed, so that the watches are out 48 hours before the storm could impact Florida, which would be starting late Tuesday. So I'm virtually certain that there's either going to be a depression, a tropical storm, or a potential tropical cyclone in the Southwest Gulf as early as Sunday evening. So we're going to have a track on it by then. And by the way, the National Hurricane Center has tagged this area of low pressure, meaning that now we can start running hurricane models. So once we have those hurricane models run, I think we'll have a better idea if, in fact, this could potentially intensify over the Gulf. All right, let's go forward a little bit more. Here we are Tuesday at 8 a.m., and you could see that there's a real spin in the Gulf of Mexico. And the system's getting a little stronger. And I think I just want to back up for 1 second because I want to show you. Look at Saturday here in the Bay Area and across Florida. Beautiful day. Folks, take advantage of the weather Saturday. It's going to be generally a nice day across most of Florida. Because by Sunday, here we are in the middle of the afternoon, and it's pouring in most of Florida. Anywhere from Tampa and Orlando south or even the Nature Coast. We're getting rain. And periods of heavy rain. That continues probably into Monday, although Monday should be a generally drier day. So we'll get breaks. We'll get plenty of breaks on Monday, I think, after that first disturbance moves out. It's the second disturbance that's the humdinger here. It's the one that could be strong. And we could get a break on Tuesday, at least initially, until later Tuesday when that system begins to move in. And that's a bona fide, probably named system. Maybe even a low-end hurricane. That moves through sometime Tuesday night into Wednesday. And then maybe by Wednesday night and Thursday we clear out. And by the way, behind that would legitimately be drier air, autumn air. It would actually usher in the end of rainy season and the beginning of dry season. And by the way, we've had one of the rainiest rainy seasons on record here in the Tampa Bay area and also in Sarasota. We've seen like 65 inches of rain or so, which is like triple what Sarasota had by this time last year. So it's a tale of 2 years. But we're going to be adding a lot more rain. On average, the models over the next 7-8 days, they show 5 to 10 inches. Now, again, if the system goes further south, and I think that's possible, then we would get a little less here in the Tampa Bay area. And it's really hard to know. Without the storm forming, it's really hard to know exactly where it's going to go. We just don't know. And if we don't know where it's going to go, we don't know how much surge there's going to be, if any, and where that surge is going to be. We don't know how strong the winds are going to be and where those strong winds will be. One thing we can say is everybody's going to see the tropical downpours. It's just a matter of who gets the heaviest stuff. And it obviously depends upon where the storm tracks. Okay, so with that said, I want to go back to this graphic here. You may have to give me a second. For some reason, Facebook is not loading for me, and I'm going to need to answer questions from Facebook. Oh, here we are. Okay, it finally loaded. Okay. Nicole wants to know, is shear going to keep it from getting stronger? That's a great question. I think not initially. I think it may stop it from getting too strong. But I think at least through Monday morning, there's not much shear yet to impact it. So if it can get its act together quickly tomorrow, Sunday, and Monday, then it has a chance of becoming a strong storm before the wind shear starts dipping further to the south and impacting it. And again, as I was trying to explain before, sometimes if the wind shear is just north of it, but not over the system's not moving towards the wind shear, actually this dip in the jet can inflame it or enhance the intensity of the system. That can happen. These are really, really tough forecasts. All right. Load it back up again. and see what kind of questions we have. Hitika wants to know if it's going to hit Tampa, and that's a tough question. I would say the best chance is that it probably goes south of Tampa. That's probably the best chance. But there's certainly a good chance that it comes to Tampa. And by the way, if probably the further north it goes, the stronger the system's likely to be. At least that's according to our ensemble models. Most of the strongest ensemble models show it moving a little bit further to the north. So I appreciate that question. So Bruce wants to know if it takes the Canadian model route, will it be stronger? Yeah, we always worry about that because let's say the storm gets stuck in the southern Gulf and has days to kind of get its act together, right? And let's say the wind shear passes it by without really impacting it. Then it has kind of an open door to move north and get stronger. The Canadian doesn't show a very strong storm. It does show intensification during that time period. But yes, you're onto something. If the storm misses the wind shear and it stays in the Gulf longer, it has a chance of becoming stronger. Of course, remember, the Gulf of Mexico is record hot right now. Either record hot or, almost record hot. So Migo wants to know if it's going to hit Highlands County. So it's possible. Highlands County didn't get much from Helene, obviously. But this storm looks like it's going to affect southern parts of the Bay Area maybe harder than the northern part. So if you're south of Tampa Bay, I would probably expect more impacts. Gary, usually I prefer the European model over the GFS, usually. But this year, I can't say the European model's been any better. Actually, the model that's been pretty much the best has been the Icon model, which is the German model. And the German model, 2 runs in a row, the 12Z and now the 18Z, shows it going through Fort Myers like a strong tropical storm, low-end hurricane. So it was very good with Helene's track. The Icon model was very good with Helene's track, but it way underdid Helene's intensity. I don't think the Icon model and some of these global models are not very good at predicting the intensity of storms. Very bad, actually. So I don't know how much stock you can put into these global models when it comes to predicting intensity. But in terms of the skill in predicting the track, the Icon did very well with Helene, and if I were a betting man, the Icon model may be the best model here in terms of track. So that would put it south of Tampa Bay, and that means the heaviest rain would also be south of Tampa Bay. But again, that's just me. Without the storm having formed yet, it's very difficult to know for sure. And I could be wrong about that. All right. Yeah. So Lisa wants to know that Pinellas County got hit, especially St. Pete Beach. Believe me, I know. I've spent a lot of time in my life on St. Pete Beach. And it's horrible to see what's gone on there. There's huge sand dunes. There's restaurants that are just wiped out. It's going to take so long to rebuild. And the last thing we need is another hurricane. I do remember back in 2004, Hurricane Jeanne and Hurricane Francis hit like Port St. Lucie. And then Hurricane Jeanne hit a few weeks later. Again, Port St. Lucie. And it's horrible that the people there had to go through 2 storms, one after the other. But I also thought to myself, well, at least they didn't rebuild and then another storm come through, So, I mean, it's not really much of a consolation prize, but we just don't know the answer yet. You're welcome, Gary. Kathy says, no chance of it coming to the Panhandle. There's always a chance. Most of our models do not show the Panhandle. A couple of the ensembles show that it may move as far north as the Panhandle. Can't rule it out, but for right now, that's not what it's showing. Cheryl Lamb wants to know about Brooksville. Good question. I think the worst of it should be south of Brooksville. I'm most concerned about Tampa Bay and south, although don't get me wrong, I'll show you. Look at the European model, and you'll see that there's European model is far enough north so that even the Nature Coast feels some of the bigger impacts of the storm. But generally speaking, as you look at these are the models. Most of them are Tampa Bay south. Right? At the average of those, you can see it's mainly south. Sarah wants to know, can this become a major hurricane? It seems not that likely, but I'm not going to rule that out. And I know it sounds strange that I wouldn't rule it out. But, let me show you something. And just bear with me here because it's going to take me a minute to bring it up, to find it. Because I didn't load it into the show. But it is something that's worth showing you. Okay. So this is something called our graph model, Okay, and it basically is really good at showing daily thunderstorms. And the jury is out as to how good it is on showing, on showing tropical systems. Although I will say that again, it did a very good job at showing where Helene was going to go, and it did a very good job at the intensity, the overall end result intensity of Helene. But it was too fast to develop Helene, so it had some problems. But the track was perfect. So let me show you what the latest graph model is showing. And I show you that because if this is right, and the graph model is not great, this is 60 hours out. The graph model is really a high resolution model, but it does show what is a very strong hurricane already by Monday morning in the western Gulf of Mexico. Just to give an idea of where that is, it's a small hurricane, tiny little mini hurricane, but it's a hurricane and it's a strong one. Okay, so can I rule out that this could become a strong hurricane? No, I can't. And it's because, there are hints that it has some chance, but very few hints, right? Most of the models say this will be a high-end tropical storm or a low-end hurricane. So let's cross our fingers and hope that it's nothing more than that. All right. So someone's traveling from Ocala to South Florida, but I didn't get when. And unfortunately, there's so many comments that it flew by really quickly. Yeah, so Maria wants to know about Pasco County. Pasco County should be on the northern edge of the heaviest, in my opinion. Again, it's too early to know. But I would say the better chance of getting a direct hit would be south of Tampa Bay, and the better chance of not getting a direct hit would be north of Tampa Bay. Hopefully that helps you. Stan, Vero Beach, I wouldn't worry too much. You'd probably get some heavy rain Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, maybe. But Vero Beach on the other side of the state, so I don't expect there to be too much in Vero Beach. Obviously, you get the heavy rain, but you don't have to worry about a direct hit, obviously, in a place like Vero. Nicole, you're welcome for everything I do. I appreciate it. Yeah, Donna, Englewood. That's a great question because Englewood was very exposed during Helene. Englewood's in the southern part of Sarasota County, in case everybody's wondering. And yeah, you're closer to what the consensus would be of these models showing a storm probably going south of Tampa Bay. Probably. Paul wants to know if South Tampa is going to be affected in the West Shore area. I know West Shore has been through just a storm, and a horrible one. I know lots of people, obviously, who live in South Tampa, are stations on the Hillsborough River. And I know so many people lost so much along West Shore. All I can say to you is this. We know what to expect if there's a big storm that hits us. You just want to make sure your valuables are not in an exposed place, And if you're on the beach, you want to make sure and if let's say this storm came in, let's say it was a hurricane, let's say it came in near Tampa Bay, you want to make sure that your car is not in an exposed area. I had a friend who wrote me, who lives on Indian Rocks Beach, and she said, "Hey, Jeff, the day before Helene, should I move my car? I don't plan on leaving the beach." And of course, I'd recommend if you're told to evacuate, you should. But some people don't want to, and she was on the second or third floor or something like that. But luckily, she did move her car out of the garage and moved it to the mainland and was able to save her car. So again, we got to be smart if, in fact, this storm heads our way. We just have to do our best to kind of to take the stuff that's most important to us, if we have to. Again, it's way early to be talking about anything like that, though. But I do appreciate your question about the West Shore area of Tampa because it is very exposed, very low, very close to sea level. Yeah, Michaela wants to know about Bradenton, and Terry wants to know about Venice Island, and both of you are south of Tampa Bay. Obviously, the further south, I think the better chance that you get more in line with a hit here. But again, this is kind of a stab in the dark. Without the storm having formed, we haven't run all the computer models we need to run on it. We now have an area to investigate, and an invest as we call, which means that starting tonight, we're going to start getting those hurricane models, which are better at forecasting cyclogenesis or the development of a cyclone, so a formation of a storm. And so we'll start to get a better handle this weekend. I appreciate that. John wants to know about Hernando and Hernando County. With any luck, anybody north of Tampa Bay, including Hernando County, will be north of this storm, hopefully. But again, too early to be certain about any of that stuff. Sarah wants to know what the timeline is. That's a great question. Because it's not just, the timeline is not just going to be, what happens when the main event comes on Wednesday or Tuesday night. It's also going to be what happens before, because it's really two systems. One very weak, but laden with tropical moisture system. So you'll see we start out dry tomorrow. So folks, if you're in Florida, tomorrow's the day. Go out, enjoy it, have a nice day, because look at Sunday. Here we are Sunday morning. Here we are Sunday afternoon. It's a mess. It's just rain, gloomy, some downpours. So if you have to pick a day to be outside, Saturday. Saturday's the day to do it. Then we'll probably be on and off with those downpours through Monday. We may get a bit of a break Monday and Tuesday. Maybe some type of break. Then the main event really is loading up on Tuesday morning in the Central Gulf and pretty quickly moving east according to these models. So we get back into the rain later Tuesday. And then the worst of it is Tuesday night and Wednesday morning as the storm makes landfall somewhere. Yeah, this is the European model, which shows the storm making landfall in like Manatee County. And the earlier GFS also made landfall in like Manatee County. But the new American model is further south. And I imagine the new European model would also be further south, but it only goes out 90 hours, so it's hard to know exactly where it's going to end up. But I kind of get the feeling that the best bet is that it goes south of Tampa Bay right now, and it may go through Fort Myers. But again, it's basically 50-50. I'm just telling you what would make the most sense, but we'll see what happens. Karen wants to know if the storm has a name. Not yet, but it could have one by Sunday. And somebody asked about Brandon. Heidi asked about Brandon. Well, Brandon will be affected with heavy rain, and Brandon's not. Most of Brandon's not near the water, right? So there might be some areas off the Selman there that are close to the water, but generally speaking, it would just be a lot of heavy rain. But yes, I mean, and some gusty winds if it came straight across Tampa Bay. Rosa wants to know if it's coming towards Georgia. I doubt it. I don't think so. I think this would move straight across the state. Probably. Not definitely, but probably. Kimberly wants to know about Fort Lauderdale. And let me show you the rainfall totals, because this does go down to Fort Lauderdale. You can see it in the southeast corner there. And it basically says 3 to 6 inches of rain. And if it moves further south, I think there could be a foot. Someone in the state is going to get a foot of rain next week. I don't know if it's going to be Tampa, Sarasota, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, I don't know, but it's going to be waterlogged. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Let me, I think I have a graphic to kind of pull up here. I mean, look at this. And let me pull this one in too. Look at these two graphics I'm about to show you. Look at this. This is crazy. I mean, so Tampa has seen 64 inches of rain. That's more than double last year. And it's like 20 inches above our normal. Okay, so it's one of the rainy seasons we've had. And we're gonna add 5 to 10 inches probably next week. Bradenton has had more, 67 inches. Last year was the driest year on record. It only had 22, so we've had triple the rain of last year. So it really has been crazy weather whiplash. And if you look at these totals, and by the way, if you're near the water, you add the water from Helene, well, the ground is saturated, right? I mean, the ground really can't handle my water. So I think when we start seeing these downpours, flooding is going to happen faster than it would typically happen. So before the main event comes on Wednesday, give or take, we're likely going to be dealing with street flooding in parts of our area even before that, maybe as early as Sunday or Monday. Hope wants to know about Indian Rocks. Obviously, you're exposed to the water there. The hope is that this storm is going to go south of you. And the majority of models show that, but not all. There are some members of some of these, we'll call it the ensembles, that show the storm going a little farther north. So I think I'd be most concerned if I were located from Tampa Bay south, and gradually less concerned about the storm as I head north towards the Big Bend and towards the Panhandle. Of course, the Big Bend doesn't want a hurricane, that's for sure. Karen wants to know about Port Charlotte. Yeah, that's an area where I would be keeping a very close eye on things, because if there is an average track here, it's closer to the Port Charlotte area. So thanks for that question. Again, we don't know how strong it's going to be. Way too early to know. Raul wants to know if this can develop into a hurricane, and the answer is it could. It definitely could. We're not sure yet if it's going to be a strong tropical storm or a hurricane, but both of those possibilities exist right now. Jason wants to know, it's crazy that we're in drought all winter and then the spring it turned around so much. Yeah, Jason, I mean, we've had weather whiplash. Part of it, though, is the transition from El Nino last year to La Nina this year. So it's partly that, we had a really strange summer last summer, and then we had a really strange summer this summer. 2 strange summers back to back. Nate wants to know about Citrus County. I think probably you're okay. The further north you go, the better off we are. Someone asked about Ruskin. If you're near the water in Ruskin, and you got to keep a close eye on this storm, because if it turns into a Cat 1 hurricane, decides to come near Tampa Bay, there would obviously be some storm surge. So I appreciate that. Maria wants to know about Central Florida. Obviously, no one is going to escape the rain from this system. I mean, so look at Sunday. So Saturday is great. Going to Orlando, going to go to Disney, do it Saturday. Sunday during the afternoon, the rains start to move in all across Florida, not just Central Florida. And then maybe we get a break, but then another batch of rain comes in with the storm on Wednesday-ish time period. Spike Lee wants to know about Northport. And yeah, Northport, you might be closer to the center of the storm if it develops. And again, we don't know where it's going. We don't. But I'm just saying early indications are that this would be south of Tampa Bay most likely. And if that's the case, then Port Charlotte, Northport, that area would be closer to the storm. Yeah, Christy, I would be concerned to some degree about storm surge in Naples from this, because if it does go further south, and it may, either way, even if it moves through Tampa, Naples would probably get some storm surge because you'd be south of the storm. Anyone south of the storm would have to worry about storm surge. And let me pull this graphic out to Wednesday, you could see that flow on shore. If it takes this track, and that's the European model from this morning, it may be different. But if it takes this track, the onshore flow is in Bradenton south, Sarasota, Siesta Key, Fort Myers, Port Charlotte, Naples, that area, if it does that. Christine wants to know about Polk County. Polk County would just get heavy rain. And if the storm held together as it went across, depending on where it goes across, you would get those gusty winds. Could even be some isolated tornadoes. But again, we're still a good solid 5 days away from the storm, and nothing is actually formed. It's not even a named storm yet. So without knowing exactly where it's going, we can't really tell you how big of a storm this is going to be. Yeah, so Vicky wants to know how strong it's going to be. And Jorge asked, is it going to be a Cat 2 or Cat 3? And we don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem likely that it would get to Cat 2 or the Cat 3. It seems less likely. It seems more likely it would be somewhere in the realm of strong tropical storm or a low-end hurricane. That's most likely. You're welcome about Polk County, by the way. A couple of people have asked about Pinellas County and storm surge. Carl wants to know what happened to the Indian burial grounds. They're not protecting us anymore, I guess. So Punta Gorda, about 2 miles north of the Peace River. Punta Gorda, you would be closer to the center of the storm possibly if it takes that southern route, so I'd be concerned about it. I'd watch this closely. Mario wants to know about rapid intensification. It would be possible if the storm gets its act together quickly tonight, tomorrow, and Sunday, then it would have a window of opportunity before that wind shear kicks in. Getting back to Pinellas County, because I know that question was asked, it is just too early to know. It's such a close call. If the storm goes south of Pinellas County, then Pinellas County won't have to worry about the storm surge. You'd have to worry about the rain and maybe potentially some strong gusty winds, but you wouldn't have to worry about the surge. And obviously, that was the main event during Helene. That was the difference between, no problems and every problem, unfortunately, that we've experienced. I'm going to take about a couple more questions, and I'm going to have to get back to building some graphics for the shows tonight at 10. Yeah, Amy's worried about flash floods. I get that. We don't see that much flash flooding around here, but every once in a while, especially when tropical systems come like Debbie, Debbie produced a lot of flooding around Sarasota, and I would consider that flash flooding. Annette asked about Lake Placid down in Highlands County. Theoretically, if the storm goes further south, like we think it may, then you would get some of the heavier rain from it. And Bonne asked about Venice. And again, the scenarios would push the storm a little closer to Venice, a little further away from, let's say, Newport Richey. But again, it's very early to know that for sure. I see Riverview. Hey, Riverview, just saying hello. Lakeland, saying hello to you. No, Nicole, not next Saturday. You want to know about next Saturday? Next Saturday will be fine. Yeah, so that's another thing that's worth mentioning. Look at when the storm leaves, straight northerly winds. We get dry air, we get cool air. Our dew points are dropping to the 50s and 60s. Our temperatures, even our temperatures, if this winds up into a tropical storm or hurricane and moves out, even our temperatures on the Nature Coast would drop into like the upper 50s by the end of next week and next weekend. So we might, in a way, this storm will benefit us after it leaves and finally usher in autumn. So that would be great. When will I know if this is going to be a storm? Sunday, probably. Sunday is a day I think this will probably develop if it does. Hey, Sandy, Largo, Bonnie. Okay, thank you, Bonnie. I wasn't sure. I didn't want to get it wrong, so I appreciate you you letting me know. Kimberly says Newport Richie, and I think odds are it's going to go south of Newport Richie, which would put you in a better position, but it's too early to know for sure. Appreciate that. Daytona Beach, a couple of folks asking. So if this storm goes across the state, Daytona Beach would get some of the strong winds now, but obviously it would weaken by the time it gets there. So, there could be some tree damage, there could be some power outages and some heavy rain, but you're not taking a direct hit on the East Coast. It would be the West Coast taking the direct hit. That would have to worry a little bit more about this. Brooke wants to know if it's going to pick up speed. I guess it could get here as early as Tuesday, probably, but that would probably be about the fastest it would get here. Terry says it's the first time watching in Largo. Great. I love Largo. I love Pinellas County. I live in Tampa, but I used to keep my boat in Pinellas County, so I spent a lot of time in Pinellas, and I'm there like every week or two, as much as I can get there. Yeah, so somebody asked about that. And Ed says, whoop to the temperatures. Yeah, believe me, I'm really excited that by the end of next week, regardless of what happens here, we should, cross our fingers, get some cooler and drier air in here. That'd be really nice. Kayla wants to know about Bartow on Sunday. I don't know if you mean this Sunday or next Sunday. This Sunday looks kind of crappy, if I can say that. And that's not just for Bartow. That's for all the Tampa Bay area. Next Sunday should be really nice. So, Rick wants to know about flooding. And sorry, these questions are going so quickly. It's hard for me to even keep up. I see it for a second and it's gone. Lauren wants to know the chances of it hitting Pinellas County. Well, Pinellas County is going to get something. The chances of this storm making a direct hit on Pinellas County or the Tampa Bay itself, I would say is probably 30-ish%, but that's high, right? That's high. I would say that the higher chance exists further south of development. Jackie wants to know about Orlando. Obviously, Jackie, you're going to get the heavy rain just like Tampa. But obviously, when the storm crosses the state, if it happens to go through Orlando, you get some of the gusty winds. Otherwise, you'd miss out on the brunt of the storm. Same thing with the Daytona Beach. I know we've had a bunch of questions about Daytona Beach. Same thing for you. You're not going to get a direct hit because you're on the other side of the state. That's good to know. No, Kentucky, I don't think this is coming your way. And, it's funny that you get questions from Kentucky, but look what happened with Helene. Helene had a big impact on Kentucky. Big impact, a tremendous impact on eastern Tennessee. A devastating impact on Asheville, North Carolina. I want to show you guys something. I think I still have it in the show, I hope. Oh, yeah, here it is. Maybe I can, hopefully it'll pull up. I mean, it is just crazy. So this is what happened. Helene transported so much moisture north that it was 1.5 times the record moisture since 1940. So think about that. We have records. The amount of moisture brought north into the Carolinas and, eastern Tennessee and was 1.5 times the record since 1940, which explains why this turned out to be a 1-in-1,000-year flood. Now, we saw a 1-in-1,000-year flood almost in Sarasota earlier this year before Debbie. There was that big flooding situation early in the summer. But it was only the city. I mean, it was just like, maybe a couple of square miles that had a 1-in-1,000-year flood. That's what typically happens when you see these 1-in-1,000-year floods. But that whole blue area, that's all 1 in 500 to 1 in 1,000. And the darkest blue shades, it's like a 1 in 10,000-year flood with Helene in the Carolinas, just to kind of give you an idea of just how bad that system was and how rare a system like that is. Going back into this is the latest development change. You can see where the National Hurricane Center in the Western Gulf is showing where they think low pressure is starting to develop there. Yeah, that's right. Ingrid says North Carolina did. You're right. So there was a predecessor event, which we're going to see again. So Ingrid makes a good point. It rained for like 2 to 3 days before the hurricane hit, before Helene hit. So it's like a foot of rain in the mountains, and then it was like another foot plus of rain. On top of that, predecessor rain events are common with hurricanes, and we're going to see that in Florida this time around. There is look at the future radar. Saturday's nice, but then here comes all the rain on Sunday. Look at all that rain on Sunday. Okay, kind of showing you a wider view. We get a predecessor rain event. It's that blob of rain over Florida Sunday into Monday. That saturates the ground. Plus, it's already saturated because it's been a wet summer. And then the storm develops behind it. So again, this is called a predecessor rain event. And that was a good point about North Carolina. That happens sometimes. Linda wants to know how bad the surge is going to be for Bradenton. You know, Bradenton, you're going to be right on the line, I think. So this is not something that I can answer yet. I'm sorry. But without the storm forming, and that might not happen until Sunday, it's going to be very hard for me to pinpoint any details for you. Just want to let you know about that. Yeah, Rick says expect delays at the airport. It's a great point. Listen, folks, just some advice ahead of time. And this is something that hopefully you knew last time before Helene came. If you're near the water and this storm looks like it's coming at you, just get all your valuables and put them on the second floor of your house, or drive them out of town, send them to a relative's house. If put them at the very top of the garage. Just get them away from the water if you can. Hopefully you did that in Helene. But if you didn't, just, I think that's the most important thing is kind of think ahead and be proactive. You can be. All right, folks, I'm going to probably have to go at about, take 2 more minutes worth of questions, and then I'm going to have to head to start making some graphics for the 10 and 11 o'clock show tonight. Fernando wants to know about Hardy County. I think you're going to get a lot of heavy rain in Hardy County, and could be more than that if the hurricane or tropical storm moves straight across your county. Vanny wants to know about Apollo Beach, and if you're located near the water in Apollo Beach, this is a system that you're going to want to watch really closely, okay? One thing about October is that this is when we get the most storms here in the Tampa Bay area. And that's because this is the time of year where the jet stream starts to dive south, right? Cold air starts to move south from Canada, and it pushes the jet stream south towards the Gulf Coast. Now you get this west to east flow, so anything that develops in the Gulf tends to move northeast like Helene, or east like this next system. So this is why we're starting to see this. In fact, let me show you real quick an October map. Let me just put October, just bear with me for a second. And let me show you the most likely places for development in October. And look at what happens. So storms that develop in the Caribbean, they tend to hook around and make that right turn and head across Florida. Anything that develops in the Gulf, same thing. And that's because the wind patterns start to switch. And I can show you that when we show you the wind shear here. Notice how the winds, the upper level winds, are from the west. Well, that wouldn't be the case in early September or August. They would be opposite. We'd see easterly flow pushing storms into Miami and coming from the eastern part of the state. But this is the time of year where we get struck the most on the west coast of Florida. It is our most vulnerable time of year as we get into late September and into October as well, just to let you know. All right, everybody, listen, I want to thank you so much for joining me. We are going to do another one of these Facebook Lives tomorrow, maybe twice, maybe once in the morning, depending upon how the system is doing, and then again tomorrow night. And I'm likely going to be back here on Sunday. I'm going to work an extra day here this weekend. Obviously, as things start to unfold, I'll need to be here for you, and I will. So plan on watching some Facebook Lives this weekend, and I think by Sunday, we'll have a much better idea of how strong the system's going to be and where it's going to go. I want to thank everybody so much. I'm going to, one last thing is I'll put the model tracks up for you. If you're just tuning in, this is what we think is going to happen here in terms of the storm forming and where, in general, it's going to move. Could be different than this. This is kind of an early look at what the models are saying. Thank you very much, and I will see you again this weekend for our Tracking the Tropics.